Okay, so I do a lot of complaining about Modern Warfare's multiplayer, and that's because I care about Call of Duty games. I played a ton of COD growing up, and the Modern Warfare trilogy and first two Black Ops games were some of the games that got me into online multiplayer in the first place. I've said before that I think Modern Warfare is the single worst Call of Duty multiplayer ever, and I stand by that. But you know what? It's time for me to stop complaining and instead get constructive. So I want to take a deep dive into Modern Warfare's multiplayer and dig into everything that I would change to make it great, because I do genuinely think the foundation of this game is excellent, and it has so much potential. But there's a long list of little things that all come together to make a boring, unbalanced, and unenjoyable experience, in my opinion at least. And before I start, let me go over the things I will not be covering in this video because everyone has already covered them ad nauseum. Weapon balance, skill matching, map voting, post-game lobbies, league play, no region lock, and the trash minimap. I will not be talking about any of those things because everyone has already said everything about them that needs to be said. In fact, I'm going to link a video down below from Nero Cinema who goes into great detail as to why those things suck in Modern Warfare. For this video, I'm going to be focusing on the less talked about elements of the game that I think hinder its potential and keep it from being a truly great multiplayer. So fair warning, if you think multiplayer in this game is really good, you're gonna hate this video. Also, you're wrong. Respawn delay and spawn animations. A common criticism of Modern Warfare is that the spawns are ass, and those criticisms are correct. But this may be a hot take, I actually don't think the spawn engine is the problem. On certain larger maps, yes, there's definitely a problem, like on Piccadilly and Euphrates Bridge, where the spawns just get hard locked and there's giant chunks of the map that are never used. But on the small and medium-sized maps, I think the spawn engine is perfectly fine. The problem is the fact that once your spawn location is chosen, then you have a 2-second delay before spawning in, and then when you actually spawn, you have to watch this stupid gun cocking animation, and by the time those things go by, the area is not safe anymore and you get killed immediately. It's obviously not a great spawn system, and even without these issues, if you took the animation and spawn delay out, there would still be bad spawns, but it wouldn't be nearly as bad as it is right now. I think if Infinity Ward took out the stupid overhead display and then the gun cocking thing when you spawn in and the stupid 2-second spawn delay, I think the game flow would be so much better. The spawn engine would be able to give you a safer spawn since it's not arbitrarily delaying the action, and while the gun animations are cool and all, they screw with the game flow because of how unsafe the spawns are. Whereas if I spawned in and could instantly fire, it would allow me to at least react. The biggest problem right now with the spawns is that the spawns aren't just bad. They're bad and you can't fight back. And yes, I know you can YY to cancel the animation, but that's not the issue. The issue is the animation is there in the first place. Point man. Ever since Modern Warfare 3, COD games have been trying to find ways to complement both objective play and kills, the most popular method being the score streaks, which were introduced in Black Ops 2 and came back in pretty much every game after it. However, Modern Warfare went back to the kill streak system of MW2 and Black Ops. But the problem with this is that back in MW2 and Black Ops, the game was simpler and the community was different. The game has evolved, and that's the whole reason why the system was changed in the first place. Objective play is no longer rewarded with streak progress, which partially contributes to this game being so campy and objective games being such blowouts. There's no incentive to play objective anymore. And that's where Point Man comes in. There's a red perk called Point Man that swaps your streaks back to score streaks, and the amount of enjoyment it adds to the game is insane. Like, playing a match of domination with Point Man is at least 10 times more enjoyable, because I feel like I'm actually being rewarded for playing the game the way it's being asked of me. But here's the issue with Point Man. It's in the same category as Ghost and Overkill, which are borderline crutch perks in both multiplayer and Warzone. I understand that TDM and free-for-all players don't like score streaks, and I agree with them, but why isn't Point Man just a default rule in objective modes? Why not remove the Point Man perk from the game, but then make score streaks the default when playing objective modes, and then keep kill streaks for deathmatch and free-for-all. I can respect Modern Warfare for wanting to go back to the way COD was in the old days, but some things were changed for a reason. Point Man should not be a perk, it should be a default rule in objective modes. UAVs and CUAVs. Why are these in the same slot? Like, it's a small thing, but seriously, why are UAVs and CUAVs in the same slot? You can't run them both at once anymore. Up until this point, one of my favorite kill streak combos in every Call of Duty game has been UAV, CUAV, and then a third one, depending on the game. They were cheap, they comboed together really well, and they kept the pace up because it would keep the enemy team on their toes. It's the little things like this that make Modern Warfare feel so slow and discourage movement. Dead silence. I debated putting this one in the category of things everyone already complains about, but I felt it needed to be elaborated on regardless. I don't actually mind how loud the footsteps are in this game. Honestly, I like it. I wish they were this loud in Warzone. It means you don't get snuck up on as easily, and there's more risk-reward with your movement. However, by removing Dead Silence as a perk and making it a chargeable field upgrade instead of that, it once again encourages camping. If Dead Silence was a perk 2 or 3 instead of a field upgrade, people would be moving around a lot more. Infinity Ward crafted a really weird dynamic here, where they cranked up the footstep audio, but then didn't give you any consistent tools to deal with it. Dead Silence needs to be a perk like it's always been. Footsteps have always been obvious in Call of Duty games. Black Ops 3 and COD World War II had super obvious enemy audio, but they never encouraged camping before now because there was always something you could do about that, and everyone understood the pros and cons of their movement. The removal of Dead Silence mixed with the changes to the minimap have slowed down the game pace dramatically because this is now a Twitch-based arcade shooter where not moving gives you a distinct advantage. Damage multipliers. People have complained about the gunplay in this game being really inconsistent, and it is. But I think it's for different reasons than people realize. Some people say it's the hit reg, some people say it's the netcode, and those are obviously still problems, they're not perfect. But I think the core issue with the gunplay in this game is the damage multipliers. In most Call of Duty games, weapons do flat damage to everywhere except the head. Like, for example, they'll do 30 damage everywhere, but then 1.2x to the head, or 1.1x to the head. Call of Duty has always been a simple game, so very simple damage multipliers for this worked. However, Modern Warfare got more specific with it and has added multipliers for the legs, chest, upper chest, head, arms, and so on, and this would be fine if the multipliers weren't so obviously inconsistent. Everyone knows the feeling of playing this game, putting 5 shots into someone and not killing them, but then they turn on you and hit you 3 times and you're dead with the same gun. Or maybe you're like me and somehow get a headshot hit marker with a sniper, something that should literally never happen. I genuinely think there's something wrong with the multiplier consistency in this game. The hit reg isn't the problem, the hits are registering just fine, but the damage is extremely inconsistent. And I think that's because this game has way more body multipliers than previous games, and it's for this exact reason that COD never did stuff like this before. It's a fast-paced game. It's based on respawns. You're supposed to get into a fight, the fight ends, and then you get into another fight. It's a very simple game at its core. So when you add all these multipliers, it makes the game feel inconsistent, even when they're working properly. I honestly do appreciate headshots being really valuable in this game, because a common criticism of recent COD games has been that headshots don't actually do a whole lot of damage anymore. But now we have the opposite problem. Modern Warfare's time to kill is very short compared to recent Call of Duty games, but then we have these multipliers that make it feel super inconsistent, both by design and by bugs. Or at least I believe there are some bugs here. The damage scaling was just a bad idea in a game this fast-paced. In Warzone, totally, go for it. The time to kill is longer and the really detailed damage scaling makes sense there. But in a quick, fast TTK respawn shooter, the in-depth damage scaling just makes the shooting feel unresponsive and the gunfights inconsistent. Visual noise. For the uncultured in the audience, visual noise is a general term for the amount of unnecessary things on the screen during gameplay, and it's not always bad. In fact, a game with no visual noise at all can get pretty boring, but some games, like Modern Warfare, go way overboard with it. Everyone knows about the excessive motion blur and film grain that this game has, both of which can thankfully be turned off. But there is a whole bunch of obnoxious particle effects, shadows being light in some places, darker in other places. You have some colors on the environments being brighter than others and some being darker. You have giant UI icons in objective modes like domination and demolition. It all contributes to the feeling that this game doesn't have a set color palette, but rather just has a whole bunch of random colors, and it makes identifying enemies really difficult. People criticize a lot of the COD games for having really bland environments, and they do sometimes, but it's never difficult to identify enemies. And I'll gladly take bland colors but easy identification over more realistic environments and harder identification. And what's so funny to me is back in Black Ops 3, Treyarch actually made some big sweeping changes to environment color schemes and shadows after people complained about visibility. Infinity Ward's own previous games like MW3 and Ghosts were also criticized for having really bland colors on uninteresting backgrounds, but I never had issues spotting enemies in those games because they had much less visual noise. There weren't so many clashing colors on the map, there weren't so many random set pieces, there weren't so many inconsistent shadows. There's a reason why the bland COD games still had better visibility than Modern Warfare. It's not the color scheme, it's the visual noise. So how do you fix this? Well, take a page out of Treyarch's book in Black Ops 3. They adjusted the shadows and the lighting to make things more consistent and make character models pop a little more, while still maintaining a consistent color scheme. This game would be immediately so much better if the visibility was improved. Small map mosh pit. No, I'm not talking about shoot the ship or anything like that. I'm talking about a dedicated small map playlist that somehow hasn't been added yet. I hate shipment. If you think this game's shipment is legitimately a good map, you need to never talk about video games again. But you know what maps I actually really like? Hackney Yard, Rust, Hard Hat. You know how often I get to play those maps in the current voteless rotation? Never. I hardly ever get to play those maps, because we can't vote for them. This is the biggest problem with the map system in the game. If you're going to get rid of map voting, you need to at least let us do something about getting the maps we want. Some people have suggested a map filter, and while I do think that would be helpful, it would be kind of the opposite problem, because then certain maps would never be played. But looking at some of the maps in this game, maybe that's not a bad thing. Black Ops 3 had a playlist called Chaos Mosh Pit that was probably the best way to play that game, and I think this game needs to do that too. TDM, Kill Confirmed, and Domination on a rotation of Rust, Hackney Yard, Shoot House, Gunrunner, Hard Hat, Hideout, and not Shipment. If you want camos and XP, Shipment is great, whatever. If you want an actual match of Call of Duty, it's terrible. Give us a small map playlist without Shipment, so it's not just the camo sweats holding corners the whole time. 6v6 and 10v10 balance. There's certain maps in this game that absolutely should not be in 6v6 anymore. Grozna Raid and Euphrates Bridge come to mind, but honestly, I'm kind of on the fence about any Incursion being 6v6 too, because that thing is still way too big. Grozna and Euphrates absolutely should not be in 6v6 though. If something could be done about that, I'd greatly appreciate it. And that's everything I would do to fix multiplayer in Modern Warfare, and that's what I genuinely think would make the game better. So let me know what you think would make Modern Warfare better, or if you think the game is perfect as it is. Follow me on Twitter, on Twitch, or my music channel, links to all those places in the description, and I'll see you all a little later.